All right, everybody, welcome back. After some testing on the new setup, I wanted to do little changes on just some minor things. As you can see, the turbo is off. I wanted to make a small adjustment to that with Mr. Pack Parts, just to better make this air-to-water system flow. We're making boost extremely fast, or faster than mathematically anticipated. I was expecting around 400 to 500 RPM difference compared to the SRX 950 with this setup, even though it's a slightly larger compressor wheel. But we're able to spool the turbo around 5,000 RPM, which is a lot sooner than I want it to be, almost. I don't really need it to hit full boost until about 6,500, just because the transmission only drops from 8650 down to 6,500 on the 3 to 4 shift, and the 4 to 5 shift it only drops down to 6,700. So it's almost not really needed for the turbo to spool up that quickly. So if we're going to make some changes to that and get it to just flow a little bit more, if you catch my drift. As far as everything goes, the air-to-water setup's working great, and then the fuel pump system's also working great. I'm switching out the fittings on the air-to-water system. I was asking good old GPT what I could do to try and make this core a little bit more efficient. I was seeing a 40 to 45 degree intake air temp rise over the 60 to 160 pole, and I'll include that in the video, probably towards the end. As far as everything else goes, the air-to-water system is working great. As you know, this is the entire charge piping, intake manifold and then turbo. The core itself, if I could go bigger or better, I probably will. I might go to a Bell core in the future, or see if I can hit a Plasma Man and see if he can make me something that's only 15 inches long, and then however width, I got plenty of width to play with. The fittings, on the other hand, they're 3/4 MPT to PTX or PEX, yeah. This is trash, so I need to change these out definitely. So I'm going to a 3/4 MPT to -12, and then a -12 to a hose quick fitting, so that way it's easier that way. And also mandrel bend only, so these won't be a cast 90 anymore. There'll be a true mandrel bend fitting, and I'll change these out as well. As far as the air-water, or the water system in general, everything's working great here. It's about 2 gallons of water, and then the rest is ice. So whatever the capacity of that is, it's around 16 to 20 pounds of ice. But I'm gonna change up the fluid that I'm putting in it. I'm gonna switch to a non-glycol race coolant. So like, it's technically for snowmobiles or icy conditions for coolant, not on the engine side, but on the air-to-water side. So switch to a more traditional coolant instead of water, and then start running dry ice instead of ice. Publix around here, the goat of grocery stores in Florida, sells dry ice, and them motherfuckers are everywhere. So I can pick up dry ice pretty easily, and I can use less ice, less coolant, as well as run a little bit of a different vent system. So this is just a little dingy dongle thing vent that I have currently. It's one of the fittings off the CNC manifold that they shipped, one of the shitty fittings. And then that just goes down to the, or that's just, it doesn't even go down. It's just a cap on the vent, similar to the wiring. For some people, they're going to be like, oh, well, dry ice, you know, releases CO2 because it is CO2. You know, only goes from solid to gas, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to change that line right there. I'm going to run it down to the grommet in front of the battery or on the other side and just run a hose down underneath the car. So that way the vent just goes directly underneath the car, no CO2 in the car or whatever. Low pressure system, everything's working fucking great there. Anything is actually making too much pressure. I can only run it at about 40 to 50 duty cycle for it to make, you know, my base pressure that I want, which is around 7 to 7.5 bar. I tried to throw like 60 at it just to see what it would do. And on 30 pounds, it made fucking 10 bar. It maxed out, damn near maxed out the low pressure sensor. So I was like, ooh, nope, can't do that. That's a little too much. That's gonna fucking blow something up and leak fuel everywhere. I was actually surprised that this line right here took it, but these 2600s are probably taking a bunch of pressure out of it to begin with at that point. So this might only not, this is probably only getting, you know, a certain amount of fuel because I run the DI, or I run the PI-DI split on 50% because that's pretty much what you have to do at this level. Just some small changes here and there just to make things a little bit easier. The pressure delta and everything on the air-to-water system is great. I can run about, as compared to the 950 setup, I can run about 8 PSI less to make the same amount of power. So on 38 pounds on the 950, it was running a certain number, and then 30 pounds on the 1050, it's also making a certain number. So, albeit, yes, it's a bigger turbo, but the compressor charts at that boost level are pretty close. More people want to ask about the air-to-water, or I'm sorry, the water to ice and then the coolant to dry ice. That's something that ChatGPT actually came up with. It originally had said to run methanol or some type of alcohol, and then run the dry ice along with it. But obviously methanol and alcohol are flammable, and I don't really want to deal with that inside the car, as well as just the smell in the car on methanol or alcohol would be atrocious. The smell in general on coolant might not be the best, but it's more bearable than methanol or alcohol, in my opinion. The coolant or cooling difference between the two, the rise over run on water and ice only, that's no salt, just water ice, on 30 PSI between 60 to 160 was a 40-degree intake IAT rise over the run. It started at about 65 and at about 100 to 110, which is a little too much for what I was kind of hoping for. It's still better than air-to-air, 100%, hands down. Everything else regarding the air-to-water system, just the shorter piping and everything, has made it incredibly easy to work on this car with not having a bunch of shit in the front and whatever. Switching to dry ice and a coolant, and so that way I can really lower the fluid temperature that goes through the core. The main point of switching to something like that is the rise over run will be right around between 0 and 20 degrees at start, and then 60 to 80 degrees at the end, assuming I don't switch the fittings. If I do switch the fittings, it'll probably be 0 to 20 up to 40, maybe 50 degrees range, which is stupid. Anybody who knows these cars or works on these cars, and all of the big guys, I'm sure their IATs probably start at 100, maybe 120, and end anywhere between 140, 160. You know, 140, 150, it's a bunch of cylinder pressure that's not needed. I'll be able to make more power off this without the extra cylinder pressure And so it goes back to my other video, or the previous video, where I talk about rod to stroke ratio, where the sleeves are needed, blah, 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 blah. You run super hot IETs, then you're gonna have a lot of cylinder pressure, and just temperature side, because you have a hotter combustion, blah, blah, blah. I can run the same volume of air at a lower temperature, which then lowers the pressure delta in the cylinder and then make more power. The lower I can get the IETs, the easier it will be to make power. According to some math, it's about 10 to 12 degrees IET is about 1.25 to 1.5% wheel horsepower gain. So if I can lower IETs from, on the previous setup, about 100 to 140, we'll say, so about 40 degrees rise. If I can lower that down to 10 to 45 or 10 to 50, then that's, you know, almost a 90 degree temperature gain, which then translates to about 100, maybe 150 wheel horsepower. And that's just by lowering intake air temperatures. I'm then reducing cylinder pressure, which makes me allowed to have more headroom on top of it. And even on the 950, this setup would probably fuck. And I was tempted to just not do the 1050 at first and just keep the 950 and do the air to water setup and just see the difference between the two so I could have a really good comparison, but I just said, fuck it, it's not worth it. And then now it's like, whatever, you know, we're going, making some changes on the fucking turbo anyway, so whatever. But the 950 probably spool up fucking 4750 RPM. And that's better than some kids on hybrids. As far as everything else goes, car's working great. Just wanted to tear it down to make some small changes, and I'll include some test hits and whatnot at the end of the video, or like pretty much right here. If you have any questions about the air to water system or want to do it yourself, I'll probably post some links to the core as well as the icebox. That's pretty much all you need. The rest of it's just custom. That's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. I'll include the test hits right now, and I'll see you next time.